I'll just wait a few more moments to let people log on. Om Tat Sat, Sada Shiva Ji, it's good to see you. Om Tat Sat, Mira Ji, divine blessings. Doing okay. It's been a long day. Om Tat Sat, divine blessings to each of you attending this evening's Yoga Vasistha Satsanga. We've got a fun topic to cover this evening, and we're going to use a little bit of creativity to explain it. So if you can hear me okay, let me know, just so I can make sure that the audio is still working good. Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Chagunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Adorations to the Divine Preceptor, who is the bliss of Brahman, the giver of supreme joy, the embodiment of pure consciousness, beyond the pairs of opposites, vast like the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond all modifications. To that divine Guru I offer my adorations. Om Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha Pahiman. Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha Rakshaman. Jai Saraswati, Jai Saraswati, Jai Saraswati Pahimam. Shri Saraswati, Shri Saraswati, Shri Saraswati Rakshamam. Jai Shri Lakshmi, Jai Shri Lakshmi, Jai Shri Lakshmi Pahimam. Jai Shri Lakshmi, Jai Shri Lakshmi, Jai Shri Lakshmi Rakshamam. Jaya Guru Shiva Guru Hari Guru Ram. Jagat Guru Parama Guru Sadguru Sham. Adi Guru Advait Guru Ananda Guru Om. Chidaguru Chidgana Guru Chinmaya Guru Om. Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, Om. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om. Om Tat Sat. Divine blessings to everyone. Hey Shiji, divine blessings. Good to see you. So this evening, I wanted to start with a relative mystic poem by Swamiji. It's from another one of his books that you can get through the Yoga Research Foundation, called Yoga Mystic Poems. And so the whole book is just poetry that he wrote. And this one is called Spiritual Painter. The soul is a ceaseless painter. He paints on the canvas of consciousness. The vasana-tinged mind is the starch that he spreads upon the canvas. He uses the brush of the ego and different brushes through different incarnations to paint a portrait of God. The karmas provide different colors into which he dips his brushes, and diverse paintings are created upon the canvas. When a painting is found imperfect, it is effaced, and another painting is commenced. The soul continues with an untiring zeal to paint the Absolute Self upon the canvas, and it has endless resources provided by nature. But when the subtle desires begin to dissolve, it sees a unique beauty revealing itself through the magical canvas. It stops painting and effaces all pictures from the canvas. It is able to behold its face reflecting in the mirror, and lo, it realizes, I am he. I am myself, that perfection which I have endeavored to paint through my existence in the world process. Thus realizing, he becomes free. So that was a poem that spoke to me, and I found it relevant a bit to this evening. And this evening, we'll be getting a little creative, which I told y'all last week that I might pull a little creativity into the teaching. So we left off, we are in Book 1, Mumukshu, Vyavahara, Prakarana, and we're on Section 3, the nature of the world process in the 3 periods of time. Sri Vasistha said, I will impart that wisdom which I have received from the divine creator, Brahma, for the cessation of the miseries of the world. And so this tells us where wisdom comes from, where even when we gain wisdom from our spiritual practices, where it's coming from. And it is coming from the divine creator, because this is divine wisdom. And it sort of also indicates how the lineage lines are important, because that wisdom can be passed down from guru to disciple and guru to disciple, and then it carries on. And that also plays a part in this evening's, sorry I'm making my phone wobble. It plays a part in this evening's teaching. Attracted by this grand proposition, Sri Rama asked, O sage, before you begin to expound the wisdom that you received from Brahma, please remove this doubt from my mind. how is it that the son of Vyasa, Sri Shuka, attained disembodied liberation, while Sri Vyasa continues to be in his physical body? So Sri Rama wanted to understand whether liberation demanded termination of the physical existence or not. Since this physical body is an effect of ignorance, how can one reconcile the existence of the physical body when ignorance is destroyed? At the same time, if liberated sages were to vanish from the earth, how could the continuity of the scriptural teachings be possible? And so when we think about this, what Lord Rama is bringing up and comparing and wanting to know is, how does one become liberated while they're still alive if someone becomes liberated after the death of the physical body? Because if my fingers are people, if each person is liberated when they pass away, that knowledge of liberation is not going to be handed down or passed down. And so when you think of liberation while still in the physical body, then that wisdom can be passed down. And that's where the importance of sages and saints and enlightened gurus and the lineage line, the teachings are verbally passed down. And so from the wisdom and the teachings, one can become enlightened because the ignorance is destroyed while still in the physical body. Sri Vasistha comprehended the profundity of Sri Rama's question and explained the nature of the world in order to enlighten him regarding the possibility of self-realization even in life. So this is where the creative stuff is going to come in. So I'll be pulling some things into view. Sri Vasistha said, "The self illumines this world just as the sun illumines the earth." So I'll be turning off the light for a moment. So it might be a little dark. I still have one lamp on. Okay. So here's a ball, which currently is kind of illuminated by my computer. And then here is a flashlight. So if the flashlight is the sun and it's illuminating the earth, so pretend this is the earth. Sri Vasistha said, "The self illumines this world just as the sun illumines the earth. Numerous dust particles scintillate in a single ray of the sun." So imagine the earth is just one of these dust particles. Much in the same way, numerous universes scintillate like dust particles in a single ray of the self. So now we will show, do this. Okay, I have glitter, so I'm trying not to spill it. So here is the self. So the flashlight is now the self. And the glitter is all the universes. And so in a ray of the self, all these universes are illumined. All these worlds, all these souls. And this is just in one single ray of the self. And so if you think of the self in its totality and consciousness in the absolute, and how much is illumined by it, that's a lot. So I think y'all can see the glitter being illumined. There we go. So in one ray of light, lots of different universes are illumined. So that's the messy glitter example. I'll turn this light back on. Okay. Who can count the dust particles? In the same way, who can count the millions and millions of universes that are illumined by the light of the self? So, who can count these dust particles? Who can count the millions and millions of universes that are illumined by the light of the self? And living in Texas, and we have NASA, so like all the space stuff. And you think of all the giant telescopes that bring back like these amazing pictures where they've highlighted the different galaxies and the births of stars and the decaying of stars and other smaller planets. Who can count all of that? We cannot count all of these things. We do not know how much is out there. Even with all the scientific, fancy NASA equipment and sending astronauts into outer space, we still do not know but a incredibly small, tiny dust particle that is illumined by Brahma, the creator. And none of us know what's out there. None of us knows how many universes and how many other worlds and planets. So it's really fascinating to think about. And if you want to go a little deeper into it, you can go down the rabbit hole of physics with David Bohm. And he has a book called Wholeness and the Implicate Order, and it's about the wholeness of everything, like the absolute self, and the topic of fragmentation of the mind and how we think of things instead of as a whole, we have fragmented everything. And so it's really interesting. These universes are refractions of consciousness caused by the mind, conditioned by subtle desires. Therefore, they do not exist spread out in real time and space, because they are experienced in the heart of the jiva, the individual soul. And so, this is talking about how it's kind of like the multiple worlds in a world discussion. We all physically were on the same planet, me and you and everybody else watching the video is on planet Earth, but our perceptions and our experiences are all going to be different. Even though we're in the same planet, it's the same existence, the same absolute, it's the experience that each individual soul is having. And so my world perspective is going to be different than your world and your world perspective. And so there's many worlds within a world. When one dies, he perceives his astral experiences within his own heart, and within his very heart, he perceives himself reborn in a different setup of the world process. And so due to our perceptions and experiences that we're having in this current human embodiment, the experiences when the physical body dies, in the next embodiment, these get carried along with us. And so we end up in another world process. Thus, one follows the course of movement determined by his karma, actions, and upasana, devout meditations. And so our karma is our actions. So what I did in whatever many embodiments ago could be the determining factor for what I'm currently going through in this physical embodiment. And then whatever I do in this physical embodiment, that can be a determining factor in my next embodiment, if that's what happens, and where I'll end up, the environment I'm in, the family you're born into, the circumstances you're born into, the knowledge that you carry on with you. Millions have died in the past, millions are dying now, and millions will die in the future. And so this is very true all the way as far back as the beginning of the limited mind concept of the beginning of humans. Millions of people have died in what we would call the past. There's millions of people currently dying right now in the terms of we are all living human beings, and anything that is living is also in the process of dying, because all things alive will come to an end. And so millions will die in the future. And so we're kind of in this queue of when our time is up, and we don't know when that time is. Just like the animals and the plants, the same thing. They are all living creatures. They are living things. And so they too must end. Different forms of world processes are experienced by every soul due to the presence of vasanas, the subtle desires, in the depths of the heart of the unconscious mind. And so each time we go through another embodiment, it's like a different world process. And so there's going to be even more different experiences from this one compared to this one compared to this one, and it just keeps repeating itself. This world does not exist independent of the mind conditioned by subtle desires. Therefore, all perceptions of realities and things existing in the world of time and space are illusory. So this world does not exist independent of the mind conditioned by subtle desires. So this world is, it's absolute. It is all encompassing. It is infinite. And so it doesn't exist apart from the mind and what we're thinking. Everything is part of the wholeness. They're not like earlier how I brought up David Bohm. We have this instinct to fragment how we think and think in divisiveness and differences, instead of looking at the wholeness and the absolute and how everything is interconnected with each other. And so all the perceptions of realities and things existing in the world of time and space are illusory. Because if my perception that I experience, the individual soul experiences, if that was true, if that was truth, if that was reality, then every other person would be experiencing the same thing as me. But they're not. Everyone experiences differently. And so it's all illusory, what we are experiencing. It's a difficult topic to wrap your head around in general, and a difficult topic to So just bear with me with what I'm saying. In our limited concepts, like our limited mind, human beings are limited. We're limited in our thinking. We're limited in our intellect. And so due to this, it's hard to see everything as the absolute. And everything is all just kind of like mushy, 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 mushy. But it's all one. It's just a lot going on. And we are a part of a lot going on. The vasanas contain the possibility of numerous embodiments. And so our subtle desires, because of them, because of the vasanas, it is possible that we have many embodiments. And we don't know how many we have. We could have millions, we could have hundreds of thousands, we could have thousands. We don't know. So just as a plantain stem contains many layers, so a plantain, kind of like a banana, so vasanas hold layer upon layer of different embodiments. So you can also think of this like an onion and peeling the layers of an onion. And so imagine each layer is an embodiment for an individual soul. And so when you peel away one, there's another, and then you peel away that layer and there's another embodiment, and then it just keeps going. Only wisdom can remove the vasanas, the subtle desires. And so the wisdom is going to come from our preceptors, our guru and other swamis and other spiritual teachers that are qualified to teach Vedanta. That helps to remove our subtle desires. And so we kind of start rooting these things out, and they don't have as much power over us. And so then that kind of like carves out the path a bit to how our next embodiment is going to be. And then it also carves the way of our karmas that we're accumulating. And so when the subtle desires power is lower and like diminishing, the higher self has more power. So you have more awareness. With the removal of the vasanas, the world is realized as Brahman, the absolute. Therefore, it is not the physical extinction of the body, but the enlightening wisdom which bestows liberation on a soul. So like Sri Rama was asking earlier, was how come some people are liberated after the death of the physical body, but then others are liberated while they're still in the physical embodiment. And this is due to the diminishing of the vasanas, the removal of the vasanas. And so you're still in physical embodiment, and the enlightening wisdom is what bestows the liberation on the soul. And the soul becomes liberated from the cycle of the world process. And so once the soul is liberated from this cycle, the multiple embodiments, the repeated cycle of birth and death is put to an end. And I always like to imagine this as, you know, at theme parks, they have that ride that you get on and it goes in a Ferris wheel. That's what it is. So imagine a Ferris wheel and you get on and off, and this is kind of like embodiments. So you get on one and you go around and you have an embodiment, and then the physical body passes away, so you get off, and then you get back on and another embodiment. And so you just go round and round and round. But then when the soul is liberated, you just kind of you don't keep going round and round, you kind of get flung off. So that's how I've always pictured it, just like a Ferris wheel of cycles. In the vast ocean of the supreme reality of the Absolute, the worlds arise like waves and ripples. Some waves seem to be identical, some similar, some totally different. All these possibilities are present because the self is unbounded and infinite. And so all is the self. And so you think of the ocean, and it's a massive, massive body of water. But then we have waves that are part of the ocean, and they just come crashing in, hitting the rocks, and in and out, and in and out. There's big waves, little waves, all sorts of waves. But the waves are just another form with a name of the ocean. So it's still part of the same. It's just another form and a name. And so all those possibilities are present because the self is unbounded and infinite. So similarly, the self, the true self, is infinite, and we are all part of that. And some waves, you think of us like waves, and we're all different waves of the same self. And so my wave, my embodiment, my perceptions, my experiences that I go through might look different than the next person, but it also might look very similar to another person. And so we're all just waves of the same ocean. There's different names, different forms, different shapes, different sizes, but we are all part of the same one Absolute. All the sages here have embodied many times in different forms. You, O Rama, have also incarnated many times to relieve the burden of the earth, to destroy demoniac forces, and to promote the victory of divine forces. So throughout the scriptures, when there's the reincarnations, like so when Lord Rama comes and Lord Krishna, when they've incarnated, it's because it is a time of where there's so much demoniac forces happening, there's so much unrighteousness happening. And so they are being brought in, so to say, to destroy the demoniac forces and to promote divine forces. So to help eradicate like demoniac qualities in us and then promote divine qualities. So kind of like negative versus positive, bad versus good. And so, I actually grew up in Christianity. I was an Episcopalian, and so I'm pretty familiar with the Bible. And so when you think of the biblical stories of Jesus, and so Jesus was like an embodiment that came in, and his teachings were to promote divinity, divine forces. It was promoting goodness when a lot of bad things are going on. And so that's just kind of like another branch off of something that people might relate to. A liberated sage, though possessing a body, is not affected by the world. So this is where equanimity of the mind, and then the qualities of a liberated sage, and the qualities is, I can't remember which chapter, I think chapter 12, but I'm not positive, of the Bhagavad Gita. It lists all of these qualities. His inner vision, having negated the reality of the world, recognizes the awareness of non-dual Brahman, even as a wave would recognize the reality of the stupendous ocean. And so that inner vision is that intuitive vision that is developed over time, and with constant self-effort and spiritual practices and meditation, studying the scriptures, and a lot of self-analysis, self-reflection, negating our own ego and our own demoniac forces like anger, lust, jealousy, things like that. And so when we begin to negate the reality of the world, you recognize the non-dual Brahman. And so you begin to take that fragmented thinking, per se, and you're putting it back together. And so you're taking all the pieces and you're putting it back together, and you're seeing the fullness, you're seeing the whole, you're seeing the absolute, the infinite, of which everything is. Excuse me. It is the veil of ignorance that causes fickleness and distraction in the mind, and deludes the soul into becoming identified with the perishable physical body. And so, due to our ignorance of our true self, and not relating to the true self, but relating to the physical body, this is why we suffer. This is why we struggle, is because we put so much emphasis on things at that physical level, the physical plane, like our looks, the way we dress. We worry about impressing other people, or name and fame and wealth and one-upping other people. And so all these things, it causes fickleness of the mind, and it causes like monkey mind and stress, anxiety, anger, and it's a distraction in the mind. And when the mind is distracted, that ignorance is just so ingrained. But when it's not distracted and those senses have been withdrawn and brought back in, that veil of ignorance becomes thinner, and so some of that light and that wisdom begins to shine through, and you start realizing different things. It is ignorance that causes restless cravings and grief in the human mind. And this one, there's a lot of us right now who are experiencing the restlessness of the mind and some grief. There's been quite a lot of loss within our community, and amongst individuals where we have lost a loved one. Like recently, one of my dear friends passed away. And so naturally we do go through a grieving process, and what we're grieving is the presence of the physical body, and we're still seeing that person as the physical body and identifying them as the physical body instead of as the soul, as the self, as the spirit that resides within the heart. And so during hard times in life, or challenging times, our ignorance can kind of creep up a bit, and then we struggle. Therefore, when ignorance is destroyed by knowledge, a sage experiences freedom from restlessness. He experiences infinite satisfaction and supreme bliss. So when ignorance is destroyed by divine knowledge and divine wisdom, the mind becomes free from the burdens of restlessness, the fickleness of the mind, the monkey mind, and not going down the rabbit hole anymore of letting anger take over, grief take over, identification with the physical body, and living life that way. And I don't like using the term slave, but being bound to our senses, because we're directing them so externally instead of withdrawing them and focusing inwards. And so when we gain this knowledge and we have divine experiences through our practices and our meditations, the mind is free and it settles down. I like to say it gets comfy in the self. And that's how things become viewed, because that veil of ignorance has been lifted. And so all that ignorance that consumed the mind and consumed the heart, it is no longer controlling. It no longer has that vice grip on the jiva, on the soul. And so he experiences infinite satisfaction and supreme bliss. And that is the end of section 3. I did finish a little earlier than I planned, but that's okay. I do have another poem. I think today was a poetry day. But this one is just by a regular author, Atticus. So a lot of people share Atticus online. So this is from the book The Dark Between Stars. And it's the second book that he wrote. But the poetry is about the dualities of lived experiences. So it's really good. And so I want to read this short one. Put your hand on your heart. In you, there is power. There are ideas no one has ever thought of. There is the strength to love purely and intensely, and to be loved back. There is the power to make people happy and to make people laugh. The power to change lives and futures. Don't ever forget that power, and don't ever give up on it. So I thought that was really good, because sometimes we just need that reminder that we have the power within us, and we can tap into that power through our prayers, through our meditations, and being reminded of the power of the self through reading the scriptures and attending satsangas and all of our different spiritual practices. So I thought that was really good. Okay, go through the comments. Oh, there's a lot of comments. So divine blessings, and thank you for everyone attending this evening. I really enjoyed the teachings myself, especially with the glitter. That was kind of fun getting creative. I like being creative with the scriptures, because I'm quite artsy, crafty. And Guruji and myself, he used to kind of laugh at me, because through studying the Bhagavad Gita, I would doodle out the verses and I would make all these little drawings and then send him the drawings. They were always fun. Miraji says, I will use this for the children at school. This is lovely. Oh, yeah, I think they would like it. I just had a flashlight and some glitter in a bin. And then the ball is just it's an exercise ball or something. Hariom, Sadhviji. It's good to see you. Aishaji, divine blessings. Sadashivaji, divine blessings. Miraji, divine blessings. Thank you for everything that you're working on and selflessly offering your help. It is greatly appreciated, more than you could understand. Aisha, the Wi-Fi is going in and out. It just goes to buffering. Oh no, I'm not sure why. Hopefully it works better on the replay if you need to go back. Thank you. It was my divine blessing. Aisha says, I'm taking a science class and they use the flashlight to show how the sun angles work and the intensity of the sun's rays on Earth. Yeah, I love science. I actually have a bachelor's degree in science. Science is amazing. And I really like physics. And physics kind of goes hand in hand with spirituality. You can really go down the rabbit hole with it. But it does help bring things together. So I'm glad everybody enjoyed Satsanga. Divine blessings to each and every one of you, your family, friends, loved ones, and may we all heal and have peace in our mind and peace in our hearts. May all the departed souls be at peace with the Lord. And may all the families move and work through the grief and support each other. And may we all be blessed with good health and just an abundance of anything that is needed. There's so much going on nowadays, and a lot of people are struggling in many different ways. So I pray that the Lord just blesses everyone in how it's needed. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.